You are listening to American Ambassadors Live, the podcast on international affairs sponsored by the Council of American Ambassadors in Washington, D.C. The Council is the association of non-career U.S. ambassadors who have represented America under presidents from John F. Kennedy through Donald Trump.
Our guest today is Jefferson Smith, a career Foreign Service officer who joined the State Department in 2000. He served in a variety of posts, both in Washington and around the world, and today is head of talent acquisition for the State Department. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. It's great to be here. Thanks.
I think most people have heard of the Foreign Service, but they don't really know what it is or where it fits into American interests. Tell us a little bit about the Foreign Service just to get started.
Well, the Foreign Service is the diplomatic corps for the United States. And the Foreign Service works to advance American national interests all around the globe. Writ large, it includes officers from several federal agencies: Department of Commerce, Department of Agriculture, USAID, and of course the State Department. There are also Foreign Service specialists in a variety of specialist fields like IT, facility management, security, even healthcare. But what we're talking about today, I think, is focus on Foreign Service officers at the Department of State. We also call them generalists. These are officers who work at embassies and consulates in 5 areas. We call them cones: political, economic, public diplomacy, consular, and management.
And you mentioned other agencies being part of the Foreign Service. So as head of talent acquisition, are you head of talent acquisition just for the State Department Foreign Service officers or for all the Foreign Service officers and the other agencies too?
Yeah, each agency has its own hiring authorities and mechanisms. And so I am the director of talent acquisition for the Department of State. And we recruit and assess and select and onboard both Foreign Service officers, the generalists, as well as the specialists who are working in a variety of specialty fields around the globe.
So how do people get into the Foreign Service?
Well, the Foreign Service Officer test or exam is the first step in the application to become a Foreign Service officer. This written exam has existed in various forms for over a century, and it serves as a filter for inviting the best candidates to the next stage, which is the Foreign Service oral assessment. It's the oral assessment, which is a combination of exercises and interviews with assessors. That's the ultimate determinator of a candidate's qualifications for the Foreign Service.
How long is the test, the written test? How long does it take?
It generally takes a couple hours. It's provided now through Pearson VUE, which is our contractor who provides testing. And so you can go into a Pearson VUE center anywhere around the US, even internationally. You sign up for the test and you go in and you take it. It's a standardized written exam.
So for those who've taken the SAT to get into college, it's sort of from a procedural point of view, it's sort of like that?
That's right, very similar.
Gotcha. And then after people take the test, what happens?
Well, when people pass the Foreign Service Officer test, then they are reviewed by a qualifications evaluation panel. This QEP, this panel, is looking at short essays that they've written that address the main qualifications of the Foreign Service. These essays reflect the qualities that we know that make successful Foreign Service officers. Those are captured in 13 dimensions on which we judge all of our candidates. Those dimensions describe leadership, communication, intellectual, and management skills that are important to be successful in the Foreign Service. All of that is listed in detail on our careers website, careers.state.gov. And
you evaluate that primarily from the essays, not from the multiple choice exam, I guess. Is that fair?
Yeah, so up until recently, the Foreign Service Officer written exam, the test, was just to determine who would then get looked at the next stage, whose essays would be the essays, yeah. And then this panel reviews those essays, and they determine, based on how many of the needs of the service, how many we're hiring, based on our hiring levels, they determine how many to invite to the oral assessment, which is a day-long assessment that includes interviews and exercises.
So it's sort of a 3-step process. Take the exam, historically pass or fail, then write the essays and they're reviewed. And then third, if you make the next step, then you have personal interviews.
That's right.
Gotcha.
When somebody passes the oral assessment, they're deemed qualified to enter the Foreign Service. And then there's a bunch of administrative steps, including like security clearance and a medical clearance and other things before they get a final offer of employment. But it's that oral assessment that when you pass that, you are qualified for the Foreign Service.
So why do people typically who don't make the cut, either in the multiple choice test or in the essays or in the interview, why do they typically not make it across the finish line? What are the things that they aren't able to show they're good at?
Like I said, I think our assessors are focused on these 13 dimensions, looking at the qualifications that are important in the Foreign Service. Sometimes it's communication, sometimes it's writing skills, sometimes it's just job knowledge. It can be, all of these dimensions are factored in very specific rubric that are scored. And so everybody's score is made up of these different assessments.
So it's very numerical.
It's very numerical. It's and our assessors are highly trained to follow this process.
Gotcha.
And we do data validation, so that if one assessor seems to be, off compared to the other assessors who are assessing the same group of people, then they'd have that discussion and talk about it and try to figure out, okay, what's going on here. So it follows the best practices for assessment and test taking. We have industrial psychologists on staff that give us advice and guide us and make sure that we're following best practices to ensure the process is as fair and reliable as possible.
So the candidates who apply, typically what age are they? What backgrounds do they have? A little profile of who's applying.
Yeah, it varies dramatically. We certainly get students right out of college who are applying for the test, and we have other mid-career professionals applying. The average age for Foreign Service officers coming on board who are actually hired is between 34 and 36 years old.
And is that pretty traditionally been the case, that's been the average age range, or has that changed over time?
I don't have the whole breakdown, but I think it's pretty consistent. It's been pretty traditionally in the 30s, right? There are a lot of young people that come on board, and like I said, also second career folks. We've had veterans might come on who have more experience with the military and then come on later in their life.
Gotcha. And in terms of minimum qualifications, you have to pass a security clearance, obviously. From my own experience as ambassador, you have to pass a medical clearance. I presume that's true.
That's right.
Are there any academic or degree requirements?
As a Foreign Service officer, there are not any set degree requirements. A majority of our candidates who are successful have master's degrees, but it's not required, and many do come in with less education than that.
That's interesting, because many employers are moving away from degree requirements and more towards a sort of skills assessment that the State Department's been doing for over 100 years. So State Department's been way ahead of lots of employers. That's good. It's good for our country. So you made a change recently in the process. Describe to us what the change was, why you made it, what you think the significance of it is.
Yeah, so when I took the Foreign Service written exam in 1998, it was a knowledge test. The application did not include any biographical information on my education, where I went to school or what degree I had or my work experience. It was just if I knew enough to pass the test, then I got invited to the next phase. And I went straight to the oral assessment. And again, it was just based on my performance in that assessment that I could show the skills, but it was kind of blind, right, to my background. In 2007, actually in December 2000, the written exam began to include a biographical questionnaire that captured more of a candidate's experience. And then in 2007, we introduced this qualifications evaluation panel that we're talking about, a panel that looks at these essays and grades them based on how much they reflect the qualities that make up for successful FSOs. So over time, we've been trying to look at the candidate more holistically. The recent change this year, actually beginning last year, we started looking at an assessment. It's important to reviewing kind of the process. It's important to recognize that this whole process, the assessment process, is overseen by a board of examiners, which is created by the Foreign Service Act of 1980. This board of examiners includes representatives from all of the foreign affairs agencies, but also has private sector representatives who are experts in their field of assessment and industrial psychology. And so we are constantly reviewing our process to make sure that it's fair, that there isn't bias built in, that it's effective at identifying the best candidates. One of the ways that we can see that that the Foreign Service Officer test is successful is the rate at which people pass the oral assessment. If people are passing the oral assessment at a higher rate, that means we did a better job at selecting the right candidates to come to that point, right? And so we're constantly doing the data analysis to see what improvements might need to be made. So last year, our assessment staff ran a study and proposed a change that went into effect this June. And that change is basically, instead of using the FSOT, the test, as a pass-fail threshold, that we would look at it as one input, and we would also do the essay review for all candidates, whether they passed or failed the test. And then we would look at both the result of the FSOT and the result of this qualifications evaluation panel and combine the score to determine who would be invited. This gives us a more holistic look at somebody who maybe they haven't been in school for a while and their practice on standardized tests isn't really up to par, and they just didn't do that great on that day on the test, but they had a lifetime of experience or interesting jobs that gave them the kind of skill sets that we're looking for. And so we wanted to be able to not leave them out of the process, and vice versa. Some people do really well on the test, but just don't have the kind of the qualifications that would help them be successful in the Foreign Service yet. And so the change starting in June with the test takers who took the test in June, we're getting their essays from all of them. We're doing a review of their essays, and we're looking at their FSOT score. And there's not a specific threshold on either one. It's a combined score that's going to help them move forward.
So in effect, you've broadened the pool. It's more work for your assessors, I guess, because you got to read more essays, right?
Yeah, and we have also been using since 2015 a software program that helps us to do assessments of the essays. It's a deep textual analysis software that's made by IBM. It's used in a lot of organizations. So this technology has made it possible for us to make this change, whereas years before it would have been much harder. And basically that helps us to divide the candidates into quintiles, and then we can and then human assessors do look at the essays at the highest level.
That's very interesting. You've mechanized it to some extent, and the technology allows you to broaden the pool.
That's right. And we've had now 7 years of experience with that technology. We're very comfortable with it. We've done lots of validation studies. And so this has made it possible for us to make this change. We think it does broaden the pool. I think there are, and we've done some scenarios, some simulations to see what would happen if we make this change. And it did show that there were a number of people who didn't pass the FSOT, but would have moved on and been successful in the rest of the process. And so that's the idea, is we want to remove any barriers so that all Americans who are interested in the Foreign Service will have a fair shake at showing that they have the qualifications to make it.
Great. So for someone listening to this who's interested in the Foreign Service, who are you looking for? Why should they be looking at the Foreign Service? What should people think about the Foreign Service as a career?
Yeah, I think we're looking for a number of things, but mostly we want people who are really interested in public service and in foreign affairs, who are interested in engaging with the world around them and making a difference by defending, promoting American values and American interests. My career in the Foreign Service has been tremendously rewarding. Like, I've personally had incredible opportunities to promote US interests. For example, I've been involved in establishing American business associations in East Africa. I've been involved in protecting workers' rights in the Persian Gulf, or assisting American citizens who are victims of a capsized ferry. I've been involved in hosting the president's state visits to key allied nations and negotiating bilateral work treaties for American family members overseas. This kind of work is extremely rewarding, but what I've loved about it is it's given me the opportunity to travel the world, serve the American people, represent our American values, and defend American national interests. I would say that now is a really great time to apply for the Foreign Service. We are hiring at the highest rates in a decade.
Wow.
The Foreign Service Officer Test is free. It's open to all. It's accessible all across the US and internationally. Our goal is to recruit and hire the best talent representing all of America's diversity: geographic, racial and ethnic, religious, socioeconomic, political. We want the Foreign Service to look like America and to represent America as we are, as a full society. I really think this change will open the door to the best talent so that everyone has a chance to demonstrate they have what it takes to succeed in the Foreign Service. And so we're really hopeful that people will apply, that the numbers will go up, and that we'll have the best candidates possible to hire in the next coming years.
One of the things a friend of mine who was a career ambassador when I was a non-career ambassador told me when we were just having dinner one time, and it was a big idea to me. It was an obvious idea to anybody in the Foreign Service, but it was a big idea to me. He said, you got to remember the Foreign Service is a life, not just a career. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a great point. When we joined the Foreign Service, we agreed to be worldwide available. That means we could get sent anywhere in the world, and we agree to those terms, which is exciting, but it can also be scary. But the department makes great efforts to support individuals and families in their overseas assignments. But when you go overseas, my first assignment was in Kingston, Jamaica. I was a consular officer helping to meet the high visa demand in Jamaica. You go overseas and you are a Foreign Service officer 24/7, right? Everybody, you might be living in a local neighborhood, but they all know you work at the American Embassy. You represent America. You represent America not just 8 to 5 in the office when you're doing your real job, but to your community, to the people who meet and know you. That's a great thing, but it can also be, it requires that kind of commitment that you really are. It is a lifestyle choice. Your family makes a commitment to come with you and to travel every 2, 3, maybe 4 years. You move to another place. Again, it's exciting, but it's not for everybody because it's a significant commitment.
So it requires some sense of adventure.
Absolutely.
Jeff, thanks for joining us today. Very, very interesting. Thank you for all the work you're doing for our country. And best of luck in recruiting the new round of Foreign Service officers.
Oh, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
This has been the American Ambassadors Live podcast. To hear more from us, subscribe to the American Ambassadors Live podcast and leave us a review. Tweet us your thoughts on this week's episode and tag us at AMER Ambassadors using the hashtag AmbassadorsLive.